So first of all, my name is Dianne Siraj. I am from the Bankability Fund for Women Entrepreneurs attached to Action Invest Caribbean Inc. And about the Bankability Fund, we provide equity financing for women entrepreneurs who have a small business and who meet a predefined set of criteria. We have here today some representatives from the NIS who will be walking us through a session on compliance. And I will now hand you over to my colleague, Ms. Deborah Austin, who will formally introduce the persons from NIS.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Damien. I am Deborah Austin again, the Business Support Specialist with the Bankability Fund for Women Entrepreneurs. And today it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Dianne Lewis Baxter, who is the Public Relations Officer with NIS. She has been providing service to NIS for the past 30 years. And she's one of the 2 spokespersons. Along with her, we have Ms. Melissa Semple, who's a senior inspector with over 20 years experience with NIS. And she has also performed the duties of chief inspector on several occasions. So ladies, we have some of the best from NIS in the house today. And I will encourage you to make full opportunity they will tell you how they prefer to have the question and answer segment conducted, but ensure that you take the time to draw as much as possible out of these 2 ladies. As you can see or hear, they come with a wealth of knowledge and experience. So I will now pass you over to the representatives from NIS. Thank you.
Okay, well, good afternoon again, and it is indeed a pleasure to be able to join you this afternoon. I know this is a long-awaited event, and Deborah, it's so good to see you and be able to talk with persons from your agency. NIS is very, very excited every time we get these opportunities, because what we've been doing as well is reaching out to employers and various agencies to ensure that those persons, under your control or who are part of your agency, that they're fully aware as to what NIS is all about. Melissa is the expert here when it comes to compliance, but I'm here as well. We'll talk about if they have benefit questions or any other thing that I think I need to chip in on. I would also be talking about that, but I want persons to know upfront that NIS is compulsory once you have a business. Right? So once you have a business, it is compulsory that you be registered and that you pay your NIS contributions. Apart from that, Social Security around the world is compulsory. And the whole notion behind Social Security is that you would not become vulnerable, or you would not become, in the society if you don't pay your contributions and you're not covered when you get sick, or when you don't have, guess what? You can become what we call a bug to even your members of your family members. And so to avoid that sort of thing, Social Security is there to protect us. And so Social Security is not just about taxes. And so we don't ever use the word tax. Tax, when you think about taxes, that has to do with GRA. We don't say taxes, we say contributions, because you contribute towards your social protection, and you must be protected. And so that's just a little preamble, and Melissa will go straight into telling you. I know that you may want to know how to be registered as a self-employed person. If you have a small business, if you have a large business, what are the requirements? Those things she would be able to say to you. Would you prefer them to wait to the end, or they can ask questions as we go along?
I think as we go along.
As we go along, yes.
Yes.
So she will take the questions as we go along, and we're having a conversation. And
Correct.
so just
Very
relax,
interactive.
just relax. We want you to ask as many questions as possible. I want to say to everybody on the opposite side that no question is a stupid one. And I love to say that to any classroom that I'm in. Why? Because some persons may know the answer. They may have more experience than others. And so when I'm coming to ask my question, it might sound like a stupid one. But the fact that I'm asking is because I'm not clear. And so we're here to bring the clarity. And so no question is a stupid one. No question is one that you do. If you think the question might offend NIS, no question. There is nothing that you can ask us that will offend us. You have a right to ask, right? And so I want to clear that up. Questions relating to investments, that is beyond us. So questions relating to investment goes directly to the board of directors. We fall under the purview of the Ministry of Finance, and so report directly to the Ministry of Finance, and the Honorable Dr. Ashdi Singh is our subject minister. And so any questions relating to investment, why we have to invest your funds, why we want you to think about this and you should invest it here or there, that is beyond us. We're not here to talk about that today. And so I wanted to clarify that, get that out of the way as well. So we'll go right into the session, and the lovely Mrs. Melissa Semple, very, very experienced, is going to take us through the session, most of it. So Melissa.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Baxter. A pleasant good afternoon to you all. I would like this session to be one where we can relate interactively. So anything that you might not have understanding of, I am going to try to clear it up as best as I am able to. I'm going to start on the basis of registration. So if you have a small business, middle-aged business, large business, any business, that business must be registered with National Insurance Scheme. And persons sometimes say, if I don't register my business with the Deeds and Commercial Registry, am I still obligated to register with National Insurance Scheme? Yes. As long as you're earning from that business, you are obligated to register with National Insurance Scheme. Deeds and Commercial Registry comes into play when you want to use a trade name. So for example, I own a business and I want to trade under my name, let us say Semple Enterprises. I will register to have that name associated with only me. So no one else can come after to say they're going to register a Semple's Enterprise, because that is already taken care by Melissa Semple. As such, when that business is registered, you will have a documentation, which is your business registration, to effect and to state that the business is owned by you. The business can be owned by yourself, or if you have partners associated with that business. When you register that business, you come to National Insurance Scheme with your documentation, same business registration, a valid form of ID card, which is ID, passport, driver's license, and the registration form from our end or on our website that you can get, and you can be registered in either class, whether self-employed person as the owner of the business, and you can only register as a self-employed person if you are not otherwise employed. So if you are employed anywhere, we will not register you as a self-employed person. But that does not state that you cannot register the business with NIS, right? So I'm going to shed a little more light on that. So if I am employed, and I'm going to use myself, if I'm employed, or like how I am employed with NIS, and I go and register business separate and apart, the Semple's Enterprise, I am not obligated to pay contributions as a self-employed person, because my contribution remittances are deducted from NIS and already paid over using a separate person. Somebody employed at Citizens Bank. That person is an employed person with Citizens Bank. That person goes and registered a salon, and that salon is operating. Even though the salon is operating with several persons, that person who owns the business is not obligated to make remittances as a self-employed person, because the bank is already taking care of that. And at no point in time, someone should be an employed person and a self-employed person at a given time. Clear? Feedback?
Yes.
Clear?
Clear.
Lovely, lovely. So I'm using the same scenario. The person who owns the salon has several persons employed with them at the salon. So even though that person is not obligated to pay as a self-employed for themselves, the person is still obligated to pay as an employer because the person has several persons working with them. I'm going to get a little technical, but I'm also going to provide a clarity. So the persons, if you have 4 persons working in the salon, then you need to come to NIS to register that salon to make remittances for the 4 persons. But let us say the nature of how the persons operate within the salon are not your employees, but they come and let us say they rent a chair or they provide different services. And to you, you do not consider them an employee, but you consider them self-employed persons. 2 things has to happen. And this is one I want you to be very clear on. Lots of employers, to negate the obligations of making remittances to persons, deem persons self-employed. And that responsibility has to be met by National Insurance Scheme. The National Insurance Scheme, even if you decide that you want these persons to be self-employed, National Insurance Scheme can agree with you based on the terms and contract you would have outlined that deem them self-employed. Follow? So you can set up, all right, just a second. You can set up a contract stating that these persons, how they work, the nature of how they work, how they earn their money. You are not paying them a salary, so you cannot do any deduction. They earn their money by how their clients pay and come, and as such, they are deemed self-employed. NIS can agree with you. But the decision of that is made through the National Insurance Board. Through your contract, they can say, yes, we agree, these persons come, they open, they rent a chair, they decide that when they come, they're gonna come 10 o'clock, they will come 12 o'clock. If they don't feel like coming that day, they don't come. They would have 3 clients, they would have 10 clients, and they earn their money like that. Right? I'm just gonna pause to take a question. Go ahead, my dear. Austin?
So we have a question in the chat, and it is, what if the team members work part-time? They are otherwise employed full-time with other employers. That's the question.
So that's a good question indeed. I was going to get to that part as well. So for any given person who is employed with an agency part-time and they have a principal employer, that part-time employment is not obligated to pay NIS. That part-time employment is not obligated. The reason being that they're not obligated is because their principal employer deducts and remits over to National Insurance Scheme. All right? So at this point, we do not take multiple contributions coming from various entities for any one person. If that should happen, because we know Guyanese have multiple jobs, and sometimes they do not inform the principal employer that they're going to get a job. So I won't tell NIS when I go and do the part-time work. I'm going to just go and do it. But let us say the part-time work, not knowing or not having the knowledge what they have to do and just want to comply, and they deduct and they pay over to NIS, you can get a refund from NIS. So you can get both aspects in terms of the employer, their part that they have to pay for you, and you can get the portion that they deducted from your wages or your salary, right? And that refund part is right in my department, the compliance. So don't say NIS is a refund. Yes, we refund a lot. We're not too happy with refunding, but we have to do it. All right? Any other question before I go on?
Yes, there's another one. What about over the age of 60?
Okay. Over the age of 60, persons that are over 60, no contribution is deducted from what they earn. However, place where they're employed, the employer remits 1.5% on behalf of that pensioner. The reason for that is that a pensioner, even though that person is over 60, can still get injury benefit. The pensioner is still employed. And we know at a point where you reach 60, National Insurance Scheme is supposed to be one of your source of your benefit now. You're not paying to the organization, but the organization is paying to you. So we say in the law that myself or Mrs. Baxter coming up with it. The law was crafted to accommodate for things like these. The law specifies that persons that are under 16 and over 60, no contribution is deducted from what they earn. So if you work for 20,000, I'm just calling figures so we can relate. If they earn $20,000, then you're supposed to get $20,000. No deduction for NIS. However, that employer where you're employed pays 1.5% to cover you for industrial. Because while you work, a lot of things can happen. You can trip, you can fall, you can injure, so many things can happen. So it accommodates for the injury benefit to be processed, right? I think I have another question. 1 second. Which is it? You could read it on.
Let's see. If the team member is employed as an independent contractor, where they work on a job rate.
All right, so the independent contractor comes about as the self-employed category. So, like I said earlier, most of these employers from running away from their obligation would say, you're an independent contractor. You have to pay your own NIS. I am not obligated to pay. Lots of people, lots of employers says it, but it's not right. There is a process in determining whether a person's an independent contractor or if you have to pay for them. And that form is the finding out from National Insurance Scheme through an official letter or your contract where you provide to the person that they are obligated to pay. It has to come to the National Insurance. It goes to the board scrutinizes and the board decides. The board can agree with you that this person is indeed an independent contractor by the nature, the amount of money, how they operate. They can decide on that. But they can also decide through how what is presented to them does not weigh in on the person being an independent contractor. Because you cannot dictate through an independent contractor that you have to report to work for 8 o'clock. You leave at 4:30. I provide a uniform to you that tells you, you have to do this, you have to do that. You are guided by and bounded by my laws and regulation, but yet still you're an independent contractor. Cannot work. If any day NIS should say, Mrs. Semple, you're an independent contractor, then NIS can't tell me that I have to come to work for 8 o'clock. I think I could walk into work at 1 o'clock. Nobody should ask me what's going on.
Someone is asking to go for that. What you just.
Oh, all right. So I'm going to repeat for the independent contractor. Most employers in the independent contractor phase or term, they say you're independent contractor when they want you to pay your own NIS by yourself. And they are not responsible for any remittances to the National Insurance Scheme on your behalf. Many of these employers, when they do that action, it is illegal in our sight because the regulation that governs us, Chapter 3601, Laws of Guyana, that is which governs the National Insurance Scheme, tells that any person, whether you're to be classified as an employee, a self-employed person, is done by the National Insurance Board. So the board decides if you're an independent contractor, self-employed, to pay your own NIS, or you're not an independent contractor, you are an employee. And if that determination is made that you're an employee, it makes the employer liable. So you can't term and deem you an independent contractor, right? If the board agrees that you are an independent contractor, it makes the employer not liable for contributions to remittances and make yourself responsible for your own remittances to us. Understand? Good.
I think there's another question they're asking, somebody's asking, I have a farmers group. Do I need to register it to NIS?
All right, so I would answer that in two phases. The farmer group, do you earn from it? Because if you earn from the group, then you are liable for registration. To pursue any other action in terms of going through government, to get subvention, to do any other business, you would need a compliance of national insurance scheme and you need to be registered for that aspect. So it's twofold. One, if you earn in from it, then you are liable. Two, if you have to operate within the ambits of Guyana and you have to do other work with other agencies, then you would have to get a compliance of national insurance scheme and then you're still obligated. So I would say yes on two fronts, that you have to be registered.
If you're working with your spouse, what is the minimum self-employed?
All right.
They're rolling the question.
All right, no problem. And I like that.
Yeah.
It allows me to focus on specific areas. Now, working with a spouse, the law also says, if you're working with your spouse, you are not an employee of your spouse. So at no time, if your husband hires you, or you hires your husband, how you want to term it, that's your employee, or you're an employee of his. Can't work. Spouse, in the eyes of the law, are together. They're one body. And as such, if you are the owner of the business, your spouse is also the owner of the business or co-owner of the business. So if you are self-employed, he is self-employed. If he is self-employed, you are self-employed. So you're not an employee, just to get that clear, right? So you're both self-employed persons, and the self-employed persons, when classified as a self-employed person, registered as a self-employed person with national insurance scheme, remits contribution as a self-employed person to national insurance scheme, right? Anything else?
Well, somebody was talking about a compliance certificate. I think they have a query, so I asked them to make contact
Oh.
directly with me.
Any other question before I move on? All right. So I'm going back. So we have the clarity relative to you being an employee, the clarity of you being a self-employed, and I want to expand a
I
little.
think there's one more, sorry. They're asking the 1.5%, how it's calculated, whether it's on the person's salary or we know it's the.
All right,
income
so again,
statement.
that person, again, 1.5% has nothing to do with the person's salary or earnings. Absolutely nothing. The 1.5% is as it relates to the employer. So if you earn in $20,000, that is not reality in Guyana for a month. Let us say you earning 100,000 Guyana dollars a month, then you should receive 100,000 Guyana dollars for that month, because the 1.5% is the obligation of your employer. If you are a self-employed person, you're over 60, but you're still working, you're not liable to remit contributions to NIS, because self-employed persons do not make remittances as an for injury benefit. And when you reach 60, just hear this out, whether class you fall under, you don't pay NIS. NIS, when you're 60, should be paying you. If you still work, the employer covers that. So that is the clarity. If you're earning and you're over 60, no money should be deducted for NIS from you. If you see that, and another aspect of refund comes right away for persons. And we have that a lot too. We have a lot of persons who over 60 go and get jobs. Persons after finish teaching within the Ministry of Education decide to go and do private teacher in a private school. No contributions ought to be deducted from them after 60, not the 55. After 60. Right? Go ahead.
One question, please. Good afternoon, ladies.
Good
I
afternoon.
don't want to type it because I can't put my words together fast enough.
No problem.
What I'm
No problem.
what I'm trying to establish is if I am the business owner, I am over 60, do I still have to contribute for the, let's say, I may not have employees right now, but I plan to get employees. I will have to deduct, I will have to submit NIS for them, but not for me. That's what I'm trying to
Correct.
establish. So
Correct.
I still have, so the business still have to be registered.
Correct. Because
Correct.
you would have
Thank you.
had in your employees. And your
Okay.
obligation will be for them, not for yourself.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Right? So we're clear on the employee. We're clear on the self-employed person. And I think I want to bring about a little more clarity as it relates to being an employer. Right? So persons would ask, why is it that we have to pay NIS? I think Mrs. Baxter would have covered that initially when she raised or made her remarks. NIS is not by choice. It's an obligatory measure put in place by law that speaks to persons who are gainfully employed to make remittances to NIS. And the law was so designed to have the employers with that responsibility of deducting your monies before they give you the balance. So before I collect my salary, NIS is deducted. They don't give me an opportunity to say, all right, we pay you the salary, come back and pay your NIS portion. It is deducted. That is why the compliance department, where I am a part of, the inspectors, they would go after the employers because the law would have given you that power to deduct. So you can't have the employees say, and we do have employees that will say, but we don't want to pay NIS. You don't want to pay NIS because of what? Because I want all my money. Can't have all your money. As long as you're employed, you are obligated to remit NIS contributions.
And Mel, if I can jump in there,
Sure.
it is to protect you, the insured person, to protect you. The thing is, when we're young and strong, you know, we can work, we can turn the wheels of production. It's okay. Everybody would want us to work then. But if we get sick, even the best of employers will at some point in time say, well, here, I cannot keep you any longer. You're now a liability. And so that is where insurance, like schemes like NIS will kick in and help you, right? So NIS is not there to defraud anybody. We want to clear that up, but it is to protect you against all the risks that are out there, and old age is one of those risks.
True, true. True, true. We can't emphasize that enough.
Someone is asking how much you pay as self-employed contributions.
All right. So someone asked just now, the remittances amount. As a self-employed person, it is remitted on 12.5%. 12.5% of what you earn, your declared income. Currently, the board has decided that we have a minimum as it relates to self-employed person. That minimum is an $80,000 salary 12.5 of that will give you $10,000, which is remitted to NIS as your monthly contributions from January, February, March, April onward. So you pay $10,000. That is the minimum. The maximum to which any person can pay, whether you're employed or self-employed, is $280,000, and that will be called the ceiling. For employees, it varies because some employees, depending on how they work, some persons can work just 2 days within a week. Some persons can work the entire week. Some persons work the entire month. Depending on how you work, for any given period, it is 8.4 on behalf of the employer and 5.6 on behalf of your deduction from your earnings, right? So you can calculate it yourself. So whatever you earn, 5.6 is deducted. So you can be able to know if the employee is doing, you know, erroneously taking out more than they ought to or less. And I think we should be honest enough to say if they're doing less, to say, well, you're taking out less, you're not taking out the quantity that you should be taking out. And if it is more, you also tell them that, you know, this is not the amount you ought to be taking out. And that 8.4 plus 5.6, which is your deduction, is totalized, and a 14% is paid to National Insurance Scheme on your behalf monthly, right? The employer, when you're employed, remits more contributions on your behalf than what is deducted. As a self-employed person, you do not have an employer to remit. So you remit everything on your behalf. Because remember, when you own the business, all the income and everything is coming to you. Doesn't have an employer to go to. Any other question? All right, if there is none, we can move to the stage of compliances. Good. So when you register your business.
Excuse me, I think there are a few questions that came in.
There are a few? Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Right, so someone is asking if they're unemployed and don't have any employee at the moment, and they do work on the weekends and after work. I take orders for my work, however, I have registered with NIS. Question, can I obtain a compliance under the business name and not on behalf of myself?
Okay, so that person, you start with an unemployment status. Compliance certificates are given to persons who are compliant. So compliant state, meaning first, you registered with National Insurance Scheme. So we have on record that you have a business. What is your business? And the area for which you're operating in. That's the first phase. When you register that business, if you are earning from that business, any $5 and above for any given week, you're obligated to pay NIS. And the reason I think the $5 was never amended is because we know, even in this age, no one earns less than $5 in any given week. So that is to say that once you earn, you have to pay NIS. That was never amended. So you have to pay NIS once you earn from that business. So I would want to think, if you are required or desirous of a compliance certificate, is to pursue or enhance your business. If you're now starting a business, so you're unemployed, so I'm going to take the two. You're currently unemployed. You have not ventured out. You have not done anything. You have not earned from the business. So you are currently unemployed. You can register that business, and your declaration to us at the time of registration is that you have not yet earned. But we cannot issue a compliance certificate if you're not registered with us, first and foremost. So we acknowledge that you're unemployed. We will still give a compliance certificate, which is your first compliance certificate, That tells us that you want to pursue your business, you want to grow your business, so you're seeking to do work with the government or not with the government. You want to explore, you want to venture, you want to, whatever it is that you want to do, right? And most persons, they probably want to tender for work. Most persons, they want to achieve their license in whatever area. So that thing, your initial start, NIS would acknowledge your registration, we would process it, and we would also allow you to get a compliance certificate. Moving forward, on that initial application and processing of your compliance, if you should now still remain unemployed, meaning you have tried, and this is reality, you have tried and you have not yet been successful, you make a statutory declaration, this is by the Justice of Peace or Commission of Oaths, indicating that you have not earned, you have not won any contract, you have not gained employment or any other, you've not conducted business, anything for that period. The reason we ask for this document is that if we find when you would have declared that you have not earned, and we found that you have, then we can pursue court action for false declaration. That's why we tell persons, don't take NIS lightly and come and tell me that you don't work any money. And you have made, even if it is a small portion, you declare that you have won your contract, you have done this, you have done that. And that would allow us to be able to work with you, because the compliance department, we are here to advise you so that you can become compliant. We want you to be compliant, but the only way we can help and direct and guide you as to how to be compliant is by getting or feeding us with the correct information.
Right. Well, we have a couple of other questions. The person's asking, if you're self-employed and do not get paid, or I think there's one before that. Can I register and decide I want to pay the minimum, or is that decided by NIS? I know you addressed that.
Yes.
But you can.
All right, so
person.
Sure. The self-employed person, the means of finding out what you have to pay is based on your income. It's based on your income. However, that minimum that was set by the board is to allow you that when your time to benefit, you have a minimum for which we can reimburse, right? But if you're earning 200,000, don't come and tell us we will not put you at the $10,000, which is $80,000. We will be able to set you at the $200,000, because what you remit is what you will get back if you should be sick. So remember, I'm always stressing this part. If you earn $200,000, your $200,000 is what you are accustomed to. If for any given reason something should happen to you, and let us say you're unable to work, and you have to go to the doctor, and the doctor prescribes 7 days that you were off of the job, NIS would not go back and still be paying you on the minimum after you remitted on $200,000. We are bounded now to remit to you back 70% of your $200,000 and not $10,000, the $80,000. So it allows you to still upkeep what you are accustomed to. So while you are on sick leave, NIS will pay you 70% of, so that you can be able to have a high reimbursement rate and not the minimum.
How much is late paid contributions interest calculated at?
All right, so the late payment contribution interest is calculated at 1% over the bank overdraft. It varies depending on the commercial bank. So at this time, I'm not quite sure it's 1.6 or 1.5 something, but it varies because it comes from the commercial bank, right? It's 1% higher than the commercial bank.
So somebody's asking here, if you're self-employed and do not get paid $80,000 per month, but you pay $10,000 to NIS, Why is your monthly payment to NIS increased yearly when you did not get an increase in salary?
Right? So again, the minimum as it is set by National Insurance Scheme comes from the National Insurance Board. I know a lot of persons regarding the self-employed population would complain about this because when there's an increase in public servant salary, usually the increase takes effect across the board. And lots of self-employed persons say, but I'm not working in the public sector. I am not gaining from that increase that happened. Why do I have to get an increase? You have to get an increase because it's the same. As the year progresses, it is expected that you earn higher than your last year. And again, as I explained, contributions that are remitted is what is used for your reimbursement. So we would not want to reimburse you at a lower rate at last year. When sickness, we don't ask for it, we don't know when it will happen. And because of that unexpected factor, we remit at the rate which is provided. Right? So I hope that answers. So
I don't know if I missed this point. What determines your pension?
okay. So your pension, I'll explain that. Your pension is calculated once you have 750 contributions. That is approximately 15 years of working. So once we know that you have 750 contributions, it determines that you will get a pension from National Insurance Scheme. The rate of the pension now is unknown. It is unknown because as the young lady just asked the question, why your self-employed increases. As the year approaches, your salary, whether you are employed, is expected to go up. And that should be your highest salary as the years progress. Self-employed, no different. So as the years progress, it is expected that your salary increases. The rate, we would not know because we would not know at this point. I am unable to say what my pension would be because next year I don't know what my salary would be. And the year after, and the year following to when I'm going to reach 60, which is a long time from now. So we cannot assume or we cannot guess when or how my calculation will be for my rate of pension. I would want it to be high. But as we get to that time, we'll able to see that my last years following up to when I'm about to reach 60, that should be my highest salary because I've been working. And salary is bound to go up than decrease, right? So the rate, we unable to say what the rate is, but we know for persons who have 750 contributions, you will get a pension from NIS. I'll go a little further too. Persons who have more than 750 contributions, every 50 ahead of that 750 give you a percentage. So you have 750. If I have 800 contribution, I have a 1%. Because 750 and 50 make 800, 1%. If I have 850, then I have 2%. And it will go like that to maximum of 60% or 1,750 contributions. That is what any person, once they're employed or self-employed, can get from NIS.
And that's only 35 years of working and paying NIS. I see somebody smiling there. So somebody's asking, we have a bunch of questions here.
Sure.
If someone is self-employed but unable to make constant payments because of fluctuation with their earnings, what happens then?
All right. Just quite recently, I was explaining to a self-employed person who was not constant in his payment monthly basis to NIS. So I'm going to use that to give clarity. The law, and I always focus on what the law tells us. The law dictates for a self-employed person that contributions ought not to be accumulated in a monthly fashion. Self-employed person, because of how they work, we look at a year. And the year determines how much you earn within that year. And the year is spread through the months. However, they've made it quite simple. The board, through its minimum pension, the minimum remittances, of $10,000. So if you work, let us say in January, you make your remittances of $10,000. If you work in February, you make your remittances of $10,000. Let us say there was a drought and you get no work from March to July. That March to July, you have not earned. So you're sustaining yourself from what you would have earned in January and February. You earn March to July. We ask that you make a declaration again through the Commissioner of Oaths or the Justice of Peace, either one, to say that you have not earned. And we will annotate our system to what you're saying. Again, when you do not contribute to NIS, it is you who are not getting contributions for those months, which can help in your accumulation for your pension. So we have persons coming back at this stage after making declaration to say, why am I short 17 contributions and now I'm 60 and can't get a pension? Let me remind you, sir, that in 2002, you have declared from January to August, you have not worked. And you have not contributed to NIS for January to August. We can't do anything about that if you declare that you have not worked. We cannot give you contributions you have not rightfully contributed to. As such, we can kindly and nicely say, sorry, sir, but you'll get an old age grant from us. And this is where we get abusing person, oh, NIS, this and NIS. But we cannot do anything outside of what the law empowers us to do. We cannot give you the contribution in that regard, right? Because at that time, you would have declared that you haven't earned. And we would not pursue if you haven't earned, because if you haven't earned, you can't pay. So a way of declaration, you submit for those periods that you haven't earned.
So the next question is asked if they have to renew their compliances, if it's compulsory.
Compliances, we have compliances that are issued by National Insurance Scheme for 3 months for persons who are employed, self-employed, or who are an employer. That 3 months period, once that period has elapsed, you have to reapply. We also extend for self-employed persons and employers only 1 year you can have a compliance. It is not extended to the employees. So for you and I who are employed, you cannot get a year compliance. You can only have a maximum of 3 months. For the self-employed and employer, they can have either 3 months or a year, right? And once that period has elapsed, you have to reapply. Same process, application form. The 3 months is $1,000 along with your business registration if you're desirous of using your name. $1,000 to the processing fee along with a form of ID. For a year, it is $2,500, similar document. If you are employed and you're desirous of a compliance certificate, then it's $1,000, your last payslip, your business registration, if you're desirous of using that name, and processing fee of $1,000, application form.
If you're paying as a self-employed person for your business, does the one compliance apply for both business and personal use?
All right, so that would only be applicable for if that person is registered as the owner of the business and also as an employer where the person has employees. So you can have 2 different compliances, as a self-employed and as an employer. If you are just self-employed and you do not have employees, then the one compliance, which is a self-employed application, will work.
Okay. For the question about checking contributions, yes, you can check it online and you can visit our website. when you visit the website, there is on your left, you'll see check my contributions. You have to register. It takes about 48 hours for you to have a temporary password from IT. And then you will use that as a login, and you can change the password subsequently and do the necessary. So you can check it online by visiting the website. I think I see a few other questions. Let me just go to it. So if someone has already reached 700 contribution but is switching over to self-employed, that wouldn't be canceled out. No, it's added, right? So whatever contributions you make as an employed person or as a self-employed, and you can switch either way, and you can switch as many times as you care to, right? All your contributions are there, and at the end of your working life, we tally up everything.
One NIS number. So if you move from employment to self-employed, back to employment, back to self-employed, your one NIS number is used, and all your contributions are accumulated through your one NIS number.
There's another question. What are the requirements to obtain a compliance for a business that supply a service? Example, I source the products and supply it to a government institution, and the business owner is employed by the public sector.
So again, for this person, we're considering you an employed person. So as an employed person, regardless of the nature, whether to provide service, whether to do consultancy, whatever area it is, because you're employed, your employment will take precedent over any other aspect. So you are not obligated to register as a self-employed to do anything. We will consider you as an employee. That application, you use the same self-employed application form, which is a C72A. You can find it online. You can get it from any national insurance office closest to you. Complete $1,000 to the processing fee, along with your business registration. Again, if you are desirous of using your business name, some persons don't. Some persons are obligated because the ministries ask for the business name. So you use your business name, $1,000 processing, and that's it.
What happens to your missing years of contribution if your employer never paid and there was no legal agreement or contract?
All right, so that is one of the things we are imploring on employees. Please, if you are in employment and you are seeing deduction making from your salary or wages, you too have an obligation to check to see that this employer is making the payments over to NIS. That is part of your obligation. If you should check and you're unable to see that it's an employer, then you have to come to the compliance department, speak to the inspector with responsibility for that employee and area, and an investigation will be undertaken as to why those contributions are not remitted. Please do not wait until you're 59 after working 20 plus years with the employer. Then come to NIS and say, but I never know that this person, he used to take out my thing and he paid over to NIS. Another thing NIS get abused up for, we don't see your salary. We don't have access to your earnings. We have no idea if you don't come to tell us that you working with this man and he's paying for you. We cannot know, especially, let us say you working after hours and there is no way the inspector can check and confirm that you are employed in any aspect. And after you would have exhausted your years with this employer, then you come to us. And we are limited in how we pursue a case because one, the employer sometimes no longer exists. You get nobody for carry to court. There's nobody there to carry to court. So all we have to hear is your sad story and our limitation of nothing to do because we can't pursue the matter. And all we have is your word telling us that you were employed with this man and he used to take out your money. I will just empathize with you nicely and smile sweetly because I cannot do anything at that point.
I see someone is asking what happens to my contributions when I die. When you die, whoever buries you can claim for the funeral grant. So we pay a funeral grant. If you have dependent relatives, you have a spouse, you have children, children that are under 18, they would be able to receive survivor's benefit if you did not die as a result of an industrial accident, because we have two types of benefits. We have the industrial benefit, which is a death benefit, or you can apply for a survivor. The person, rather your spouse, can apply for a survivor's benefit. If it's a spouse applying for the survivor's benefit, that spouse has to be 45 years and over if no children are there. So if the spouse has no children, the spouse has to be 45 years and over to be able to qualify by herself. If it's the male, it's 55 years. If there are children, but the spouse is very young, about 30, the children will automatically qualify the spouse for the benefit. Now we pay 3 children at a time, and it doesn't matter how they come. So you have 2 wives, one you're married to legally, the other one is what we say child mother, or you have children mother. You know these terms that we use in Guyana. Both will be able to get for the children, but we pay 3 at a time according to their ages, and we go from the oldest right coming down. Right, so that's how we pay those benefits. Apart from that, if the person is not, let's say the person is not married, but the person has a dependent relative, for instance, a mother or an old father, or somebody that was totally dependent on him, and that person himself or herself is not in receipt of an NIS benefit, that dependent relative would be able to get something from the National Insurance Scheme. But of course, the priority case would be the spouse and the children. So I trust that we clear that up for you. I see we had a couple other questions here. Why is the self-employed compliance only valid for 3 months? I think Mel addressed that before.
Yes, but I'm just going to reiterate. Self-employed compliances, your initial application can be 3 months. A self-employed person can also have a year. It depends on what application is made by you. So the application form is the same, but it's just the value in terms of what is paid. So $1,000 is for 3 months and $2,500 is for the year. So if you need a year compliance, you come in, you indicate that you need a year compliance, you pay the $2,500. If you pay $1,000, it would only be for 3 months.
Good. So I'm told that if I don't submit claims for an illness while somebody's saying something, sorry?
Yeah, I'm just asking if Sharva could kindly mute her mic rather. Because it's causing a feedback. I got it. All right, yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, that's okay. I'm told that if you don't submit claims for an illness while young, you wouldn't be able to make a claim for this illness when you are older. Is this true? Yes, because what we do when someone is working and they get sick, they would make that claim whilst they have what we call insurability, meaning that at the time when you got sick, you were covered by the National Insurance Scheme. But outside of that period, if you're not covered by NIS, we would not be able to pay you a benefit. If you made that claim whilst you were working, and let's say you're hypertensive, for instance, you made that claim and then you are no longer working, but you still have to claim your medication because your pressure is still high, and every month you need to purchase your medication, you would be able to make a claim for that condition for life. So once you make that claim one time, it would be treated as a continuous condition, and you would be able to make that claim. However, let's say at 60, you never made a claim to NIS for anything, but you have 1,000 contributions and you are now sick and you want to make that claim to NIS because you don't have what we call the insurability. And for those persons who've never made a claim, when you're making a claim, what we do, we look to see if you have paid 8 out of 13 contributions prior to the month that you got sick. We look to see whether the day before you are employed, and these are the things that we call insurability. Those are requirements that you need to satisfy Why? Because apart from being a social security scheme, NIS is also an insurance company. And so you would need to meet certain requirements for the sickness benefit in order to qualify for that continuous condition or payment for that continuous condition, right? So that is so true. And you can have more information on that on our website as well.
If I can add too, just to add a little, this is an opportunity where NIS is actually imploring persons to submit your claims while you're sick.
Yes.
Because we have persons be like, I never submit no claim.
Especially the males.
Please. If you have to go to the doctor, you have to spend, you have to do this, you have to do that, then it's expected NIS is actually literally asking you to submit your claims while you're employed.
And I like what Mel said, because even if it's one day, some persons don't want to submit the claims because they're saying my employer paid me full salary, or I will get back big money from my private insurance.
Yep.
So I
Then
wouldn't go
claim
to
it
NIS
again.
for the pay things. Well, the idea is for us to have that history of your condition. And once we have a history, whether we paid you on this first occasion or not, you would be qualified for that benefit in the future once you claim again, whether you're working or not. Right? So it's very important that you do that. If you've met the minimum contributions by age 50 while being employed, I think it's 750. Do you still need to pay NIS if you become self-employed?
Most definitely. You need to continue to pay NIS because the cutoff for NIS is 60. So we also have, you're looking at a long-term aspect. We also have short-term benefits that are paid throughout your working life so that you're looking at the pensionable part. We have sickness benefit, we have medical care, we have dental care, we have spectacle care. All of those are short-term benefits that are paid to you while working. If you're still working, you're still remitting towards those short-term.
Judge Assad, well, it is important to know that the majority of the participants on the call are business owners, because that's who we work with, female business owners. If there's any specific guidance that they can obtain in terms of, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure there are a large proportion of them who, are still not registered for NIS. If some sort of guidance could be given in terms of that, and like the process, for instance, and if some sort of assistance could be granted.
In terms of having their business registered?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So having a business register is not a difficult task. It is bounded by your jurisdictional boundaries. So I'm just going to mention this. So persons operating within Chatham Margaret on the East Coast, Central Georgetown, and all the way to Tamiri, Yarra Cabras area on the East Bank has to come to Georgetown. Excuse me. For persons who are operating from LBI all the way to Mahaica, that is the Melanie Damashana local office. So we have jurisdictional boundaries. We have NIS office set up, so it make it ease of reference for you. So if you get to like Mahaica, you don't have to come all the way to Georgetown. You have an office right at Melanie. For persons in Maiconi, there's an office in Maiconi. For persons operating within the Vredenhoek Canal area, you have the Kleinpoort Joint Office. For person operated in Stewardville, you have Leonora local office. So we have offices set up for areas in terms of your assistance, in terms of jurisdictional boundaries. Business, let us say in Camp Street, Georgetown, you're expected to come to the Brigham office, the compliance section. We will assign the officer, which is the inspector with that responsibility for that area. They will sit with you, they will guide you. That is your inspector. If for any reason you're not clear, the inspector or field officer, they come to your business. They further advise you while on your premises, while in the comfort of your environment. If you so need more information, you can also come back. So you would have an inspector assigned to you. And that inspector is the person who will carry you through the process. If you need claims, if your employee get problem with claims, that is your district inspector. So it just doesn't end with your registration.
Issues with compliance. because
It
you
helps with
mentioned that.
compliance as well. So you have an inspector assigned to your area that takes you through whatever process or difficulty that you may have, right?
And it is also important to note that by law, this is required. So
Absolutely.
it is an illegal
Yes,
practice to not register for NIS.
Yes,
So
and
for those
again,
of you on the call, yeah.
if the inspector, again, let me mention this, and this is something I inspect, they say once an inspector, always an inspector. I'm an inspector too. So if an inspector finds that you're operating and you have not registered with NIS, you have, you know what? Go against the law of Guyana. It's just like if you do something outside, you do some traffic offense, you do some murder, it's against the law. So you have committed a crime against the law. And as such, they can immediately, then if you have to get question or reason, if you are operating a business, you know that you have to come to NIS to get this business registered. Let us say you're operating within a year and you register this business, immediately the inspector can serve you and carry you to court. So we ask first, we do not, the idea of the National Insurance Scheme being a social protection agency, we do not like to go down that road in terms of prosecuting anybody. That is why we take the time to have the inspector visit, engage, do this, come in, serve you. But we're not, it's not that we can't. And there are also cases where you find, let us say an inspector have been coming and try to engage you and probably met with negativity as not to want to register. Then we automatically may have a no more engagement with you. Please go and engage the court.
I think I see two
Right?
questions again. I know you mentioned it before, but they're asking again about the payment for the compliance, the cost for the compliance certificate
$1,000 for
and the time frame to apply.
$1,000 for the 3 months and $2,500 for a year. The application processing time is 5 days, working days. We do not work on weekends. And that is that we ensure that we ask person to get everything right on the first occasion. So do not submit an application that is deficient of the things that we ask. And then you turn up and then you say, why this compliance taking so long? Da, 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 da. And now you realize that there's a query when we would have asked that you submit these things at the initial stage. So to process your application in a timely manner, right?
And she did say that it is possible for a small business to get a compliance certificate.
Definitely, definitely. So I know a few messages were in the chat, but anyone else, you know, you could always feel free to unmute. Radhika, I see you have your hand raised. You could go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi.
I have a question. I'm not too sure. I have been in and out, so I'm not too sure if this question was asked before, if it was discussed, but I would like to know if you have employees and you have not yet registered and you actually come in to get or set the book straight or the record straight, is there like a penalty or do you act from that moment? How does that work?
All right, so this aspect here, I would like all ears in. If you have employees and you have not registered them with NIS, again, the obligation is fall or within your aspect in terms of you being responsible for remitting contributions for those employees. Let us say that person or persons that you have in your employ was over a year. Penalties are attached because you would have to remit contribution from that time to current. The difficulty is that the employer, not the employee, is responsible for the 14% in total. One, it is against the law to go back and do any deduction that you should have done from the onset. If we find, or if there's any complaint as to an employee's contribution being deducted, let us say from November's month, because you didn't get a chance to do the deduction for January, February, March, or so, right away we could carry report, it's against the law. Because the law would have empowered you to do the deduction. You paying this person, you have to take it out. If you ain't take it out, then you got to recover it and pay it over, not the employees. And I tell employers this a lot, because the employees are aware of some of the angles. What they do, they come to you and they say, madam, I don't want to pay NIS. And you're like, why you don't want to pay NIS? You say, okay, no NIS to pay. And then they come to NIS and they say, I've been employed with this employer for over a year.
Tricky.
And you know what has to happen? You have to pay the entire period. And they gone scot-free. Because again, the power was not vested within the employee to remit their contribution. The power was given to you to deduct before you give them the salary or wages.
And adding to what Ms. Semple said, that employee can also take you to court. So
Yeah,
apart
privately.
from NIS, the employee can take you privately.
Labor too. Tell them
And
the Ministry of Labor also can take you. So it's
Yes,
three, she
three.
can take you privately, the NIS can take you,
And
plus
the
the
labor.
Ministry of Labor.
there's a question about a self-employed person receiving maternity benefit. Yes, self-employed persons are eligible or are entitled to maternity benefit once they qualify. And the requirements are also on the website. I know we're going against time, so we wouldn't go into all the details of that. But yes, self-employed persons do receive that benefit. The only benefit they're not eligible for is industrial. We don't allow them to pay for it because we have no way of verifying that indeed a self-employed person suffered an industrial injury as against an employed person. When if I get an injury on the job, my employer has to verify that. But if I'm self-employed, I can be doing anything.
I tell myself I get
And,
injured.
and there's no one to do the verification. So we don't allow them. Mel was saying employees, together with our employers, we pay 14%. The self-employed persons is 12.5%. The
Right.
difference, the 1.5% is to cover the industrial branch that they are not eligible for. So
Yeah,
yes.
definitely. All right, so I see Grace has her hand raised, and then we'll take the question from Rochelle.
I just have a quick question. Radhika De
Go
Freitas
ahead.
here. I just wanted to find out. Say for instance, you transition over, you did the application, the inspector came and inspect your area and so forth to transition over to being self-employed. But within that time frame, you fell sick and you didn't get to do any work and start paying the 10,000 every month and so forth. Would you have to do a fresh reapply freshly, or is there a way that I could maybe do the same just as a peace farm and let them know that I was sick and then I start from the new month when I start back working? And also, since I had to relocate, I guess maybe I would have to do it all over again, or would they just continue? I don't know. And I just
Okay.
changed my address or what's not.
All right, so I'll take it from the first one. So an application that was made by you for self-employed registration, once it was processed and you are deemed a self-employed person within our database,
Yeah.
then it will attract a date for when you became self-employed.
Yeah.
If that date is already recorded and you fell sick, then you would have to do the obligation through the Justice of Peace or the Commissioner of Oath telling us that, please note, even though I was registered as this date, I fell sick, I was unable to do anything, I will commence some X date. So that part is easy, right? If the application was not processed, then it can easily an engagement or conversation with the inspector to say, I have not yet operated. I am now seeking to do it because remember it has
Mhm.
not yet processed. You would
Okay,
only have a problem if it is processed, and the
Okay.
system now dictates that you're self-employed as of a date. If you have changed location, it is your same NIS number. We will just change you in the database as it relates to which jurisdiction you fall.
got
You
it.
will now relinquish our ties. Let us say you move from Georgetown and you go on to Melanie. We will relinquish our ties here in Georgetown because we would not send an inspector from Georgetown to go and operate and check your business in Melanie when we have an office there. Right?
Yes, thank you.
Registration.
Definitely, wonderful, definitely useful information.
Good
Dear Chris,
afternoon.
you'll go ahead and then we'll take one final
Okay.
question from Marie.
All right, my question is, all this information, can I register the business online and provide whatever is required online, and can I pay via online or MMG or through the bank? I would like to make things as easy for myself as possible. So if I can register online and then do everything else online, to my mind, I'm in a win-win situation. Just
Well, the
check it.
registration online, we don't do that as yet, but you can pay using MMG as a self-employed person. I know we're still looking at the situation for the employer, but the employer do submit their online schedules, but then they have to come to do the physical payment at this point in time. But as a self-employed person, you can make your self-employed payments using MMG.
Again, too, I think what has happened in terms of the registration not yet being online, we appreciate the face-to-face engagement. You should be able to know who your district inspector is. That is the person you'll be communicating with for any error, issue, clarification, anything. Also, at the time of registration, it takes a form of education where we advise you, ma'am, you're registering as a self-employed person. These are the things you're obligated to do. These are the benefits you're also entitled to. We don't only talk about what you have to do. We also speak about the benefits that you can get, that your family can get, and we try to get that engagement on a one-on-one basis. So I appreciate the fact, even at the time of registration, you are able to meet. So you know that the person, some persons would say, oh, I don't want to deal with it. I don't know which section, I don't know who. You will know as a self-employed person, as an employer, who you have to go to because you know your district inspector. Right? Moving on from that, you can make your payments via MMG.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But it's something
Wonderful.
that we have not ruled out, Grace. Yes, it's
Yeah,
something
Grace,
that
I
we
think
are
it's
looking. We
To
are
me,
looking.
it makes life a lot easier. You can do these things when you have the time.
Yes, we understand it's
Just
really appreciated.
driving sometimes and finding parking is a nightmare. So
Yeah,
that's where I'm coming from.
but all
But
the NIS is
but I'm
thinking about
on the
these
East
things.
Coast, so that means that I can go to Melanie.
To Melanie,
Melanie.
yes, yes,
It depends on
Right.
which part of the East Coast you are, ma'am.
yes.
I'm
So
close to Melanie.
Oh, lovely. Melanie office.
One of the things that NIS takes seriously is security. So we have to always be thinking about the security of our data. And so that's why sometimes it looks as though we're moving slow with certain things, right? So we do the checking of the contribution online, but that has taken a while before we roll that out. Even with the MMG, we had to ensure that everything was okay before we did go with that that system. And we are looking at a number of other things, but it takes time because we always consider the security of the data and how it affects our contributors.
Most certainly, security is definitely one of the
Oh,
key areas,
yes.
especially
Some
with
places
confidential
always available.
information like this.
Yes,
So we'll take one final question from Marie. I also have an announcement to make after the question. Any other questions which you may have, you always feel free to direct message me or Miss Baxter. She shared her number in the chat.
yes.
So just take a look in the chat. It's 654-8431. And she will, clear up any questions which you may have. So go ahead, Marie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
So my
afternoon.
question is, if you are away on maternity leave, you are self-employed, you have staff and everything, and you're away on maternity leave, are you still required to pay for that period?
No, you're not. At that part where you're on maternity benefit, and I ought to be paying you your maternity benefit. So the period for which we are paying you, you're not obligated to pay. You're exempted from payment. It also extends a sickness benefit for yourself. If the business continues to function and you have employees, then you're obligated to pay for those employees, not yourself.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarity.
You're welcome, my dear.
Great. Thank you for all the questions and especially the participation in this session we had this afternoon. To Ms. Boxer, do you guys have any other advice you would like to share with these women entrepreneurs before we end the session? Anything in general?
Well, certainly, I would want to encourage them, especially those who would have worked before, to check on their contributions and not to wait until they're 60 to check on their contributions. Also, if they have any ailments, it's important that they ensure that they submit their claims to NIS whilst they're working and get that one claim in for that condition. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of claims. So you're hypertensive, you got a baby, you have some problem with your back, and it's now a chronic condition. You need to let NIS know about that because you can never tell. There are certain conditions that can be linked. For instance, you may be suffering from a chest pain now, but you don't know it's a heart condition. But whilst you were in your 20s, you were suffering from some sort of a chest condition. When you're 65, you still have that chest condition, but when you go to the doctor, you discover it's a heart condition. NIS would be able to say that, yes, down the road, early in life, you did submit a claim and you were complaining about the chest condition. And we may be able to link that and pay you at that time when you're not working. And that might be a big bill for $1 million, right? We pay for overseas treatment as well. If the treatment is not available in Guyana, we pay for dialysis. We pay for a number of things. And we wouldn't say to you, oh, you've made 10 claims per year, don't come back.
True.
So if you have to claim every month for a chronic condition, you have to claim twice per week for a chronic condition, NIS will guarantee you that once you qualify, we will pay you. So I don't know what else Mel has to say in wrapping up.
All right. So in closing, I am thankful for the opportunity afforded to us to share information. It's one of my greatest thing, having persons learn from the source what should happen. They are now equipped with the education. I would want two things to happen. You are aware, you enact what you know. You are aware, you share what you know. So in giving that, it clears up a lot of misconception persons might have of NIS and some of the things they might be unaware of. You go on the basis of what you hear outside, but you never find in the time to find out from NIS, is this true? Is this what I can do? So now that you hear from the source, I am expecting that the business owners will take full opportunity of setting and getting themselves in a more compliant state so that you can be more productive.
Thank you for the summary as well as the final bit of advice. And on behalf of the Bankability Fund and on behalf of Action Invest Caribbean Inc., I would like to thank you greatly for sharing your knowledge and also taking us one step forward and ensuring that we're compliant and also we meet the legal requirements that each business must have in Guyana. So on behalf of all of the women here as well, thank you. And
You're welcome,
welcome.
my dear. Go together.
wonderful.
welcome.
So I know I mentioned,
Yeah. Love the interactive
Great.
approach.
Yes, we look forward to doing this again sometime in the future.
yeah. So I know I mentioned I had an announcement. So the announcement is in relation to the next session, which we have in the coming week. And it's on GRA compliance. And we have some representatives from the Guyana Revenue Authority, as well as the Center for Local Business Development. And GRA will basically touch on compliance and, the benefits of being compliant, also the legal requirement, which revolves around paying your taxes, as well as business culture, which will be captured by the Center for Local Business Development. So that session is on the 14th of November from 3 to 4:30 in the afternoon. Right, same time frame, and questions. It's gonna be an interactive session. You can ask your questions and get clarity on anything which you may have. All right, so thank you all for attending the session, and I trust that you all have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
Excellent job.
Thank
Afternoon,
you.
Miss.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. It was indeed very
Welcome.
informative.
Wonderful.